3:14 a.m. Western Pacific Ocean, approximately 340 nautical miles southwest of Guam. The deep ocean at 3:14 in the morning is, from the surface, indistinguishable from any other hour. The water is black, the stars are out, there is no wind worth mentioning, and the swell is less than 2 feet. A perfect night, in other words, the kind of night that looks peaceful and is not. 420 feet below the surface, USS Connecticut was running silent. The Seawolf-class fast-attack submarine had been on station for 11 days. Her crew of 140 had settled into the particular rhythm of extended deep-water operations. Watch rotations, maintenance cycles, meals at hours that bear no relationship to any clock above the surface. Connecticut's reactor hummed at the level of background noise the crew stopped noticing around day 3. Everything else on the boat was quieter, much quieter. The Seawolf-class was designed at the tail end of the Cold War specifically to hunt Soviet submarines in Arctic waters where acoustic conditions made detection extraordinarily difficult. The result is a vessel so quiet that, at patrol speed, she produces less broadband noise than a passing blue whale. She was not, however, simply waiting. Connecticut's AN/BQQ-5E spherical array sonar, a system that fills the entire bow of the submarine with hydrophone elements and processes their input through signal algorithms that would have seemed like science fiction to the engineers who built the first nuclear submarines, had been tracking a contact for the past 19 hours. The contact was a Chinese Type 094 Jin-class ballistic missile submarine. Hull designation unconfirmed, position confirmed, speed confirmed, depth confirmed, course 087 degrees magnetic, 6.2 knots, 820 feet, running on a transit profile toward the Philippine Sea. The Type 094 had no idea Connecticut was there. This is worth dwelling on for a moment, because it is the foundational reality of everything that follows. A Chinese submarine carrying 12 JL-2 submarine-launched ballistic missiles, each capable of reaching targets at intercontinental range, was transiting waters where the United States had a sovereign strategic interest. And the crew of that submarine believed, as submarines tend to believe when they have heard nothing unusual for 19 hours, that they were alone. They were not alone. They had company. Very quiet, very professional, very attentive company. In Beijing, a significant amount of confidence had been invested in this transit. The Type 094's mission was a standard deterrent patrol. The plan's effort to establish a credible at-sea nuclear deterrent, something China has been working toward with considerable seriousness for 2 decades. The logic is sound in strategic terms. A submarine-launched ballistic missile force that can survive a first engagement and retaliate is the backbone of any credible deterrent posture. The United States understood this. The United States had built exactly this capability themselves in the 1960s. It is not a posture anyone in Washington found surprising or particularly provocative in the abstract. The specific problem was the execution. The Type 094 is China's second-generation ballistic missile submarine. It is larger than its predecessor, better equipped, and genuinely more capable in absolute terms. It is also, by the standards of the vessels designed to find and follow it, about as acoustically subtle as a cement mixer running downhill. The plan's submarine force has improved substantially over the past decade. The newer Type 096 under development addresses many of the Type 094's limitations. But the Type 094, in its current form, produces a broadband noise signature that the BQQ-5E can classify at ranges that would be deeply uncomfortable for its crew to learn. The primary acoustic source is the main propulsion system. The Type 094 uses a pressurized water reactor paired with a pump jet propulsor, the right general idea and a significant improvement over the older Type 092's propeller arrangement. But the pump jet's blade rate harmonics produce a recognizable tonal signature at specific speeds. The signature has a name in the U.S. Navy's Acoustic Intelligence Library. It has a file number. The file has been updated regularly for the past 6 years as successive Type 094 patrols have been tracked, catalogued, and analyzed. At 6.2 knots and 820 feet, the contact was producing exactly the tonal combination that the library predicted it would. Connecticut's sonar watch had classified the contact as a Jin-class within 40 minutes of first detection. 19 hours later, the classification was not in any doubt. Now for the vulnerability window, because there was one, and it mattered. At 3:14 a.m., Connecticut was at 420 feet and holding course to maintain trailing position approximately 22 nautical miles astern of the Type 094. 22 miles is a comfortable trailing distance when you have a solid track and the contact is running predictably. Then, at 3:17, something changed. The Type 094 executed a sprint and drift maneuver. It was a standard counter-detection protocol. The plan teaches it. Every submarine navy teaches it. The submarine accelerated to approximately 12 knots for 90 seconds, then went quiet and slowed. The acoustic purpose is to create a period of self-generated noise during the sprint, then use the drift phase to listen, to detect anything that might have been masked by your own propulsion during normal transit. Sprint and drift is an intelligent tactic. It is the underwater equivalent of suddenly stopping on a dark street to see if footsteps behind you keep going or stop too. The problem for Connecticut was not the sprint and drift itself. The problem was timing. At exactly 3:17, Connecticut's engineering watch had begun a scheduled reduction of reactor coolant pump speed, a routine maintenance evolution that, for approximately 90 seconds, required a slight adjustment to the boat's propulsion configuration. The result was a brief, manageable, but genuine constraint on Connecticut's ability to execute an immediate sprint of her own in response. She could not accelerate instantly to match the Type 094's sprint without completing the engineering evolution. The evolution would take 90 seconds. The Type 094's drift phase, the listening phase, would begin approximately 75 seconds after the sprint started. There was a 15-second window where, if the Type 094's passive sonar was particularly sharp, if the water conditions were particularly favorable, if the geometry aligned badly, there was a possibility, not a large one, but a real one, of detection. The sonar supervisor assessed the geometry in approximately 4 seconds and recommended a depth change to 600 feet, which would place Connecticut in a layer transition that would degrade the Type 094's upward-looking passive sonar. Connecticut's officer of the deck approved the recommendation in the same breath. The boat went deep, slowly, without a course change that might itself generate a detectable transient. The Type 094 completed its drift phase. Its passive sonar heard nothing unusual. The sprint and drift produced no actionable result. At 0320, the Type 094 resumed its transit course of 087 degrees at 6.2 knots. Connecticut settled back to 420 feet and resumed her trailing position. The engineering evolution completed normally. Total duration of the genuinely tense moment, approximately 90 seconds. The Type 094 had executed a textbook counter-detection protocol and produced no counter-detection. It had, in the process, provided Connecticut's sonar team with a highly useful acoustic data point. The specific blade rate harmonic signature of the Type 094 at sprint speed, which differs from transit speed acoustics in ways that improve the library entry. The counter-detection attempt had made the situation worse for the Type 094, not better. It had taught the Americans something they didn't have before. This is the part of the story where it becomes appropriate to talk about what "0" actually means in operational terms. Because the popular imagination tends to picture submarines doing dramatic things at close range, and the reality is considerably more sophisticated and considerably more one-sided. Connecticut did not need to be close. She did not need to be threatening. Her job on this patrol was information. Specifically, the United States military wanted to know where the Type 094 went, what route it took, what depth and speed profile it used, how its crew responded to acoustic anomalies, and what its patrol box looked like when it arrived on station. All of this information has direct operational value. Route patterns inform barrier planning. Depth profiles inform acoustic prediction models. Patrol boxes inform targeting solutions that the U.S. military earnestly hopes it never needs to use. The Type 094's crew was, in a genuine sense, writing a very detailed field guide to their own operational procedures and delivering it personally to the people most interested in reading it. Connecticut's sonar team was not idle during the transit. Every acoustic emission from the Type 094 was being recorded on the boat's BYG-1 weapons control and data management system, a system that processes and stores raw sonar data with enough fidelity to reconstruct the contact's acoustic signature for analysis. Every tonal line in the frequency spectrum was logged. Every speed change produced a new data point. The sprint and drift had produced an especially useful addition to the acoustic library, a confirmed sprint speed tonal signature at a precise RPM that would help future sonar operators classify a Type 094 transitioning from patrol to evasion speed. The intelligence value of 19 hours of trailing was not going to be calculated until the boat returned to port and the data was transferred to the Undersea Warfare Center for analysis. But the preliminary assessment, running in the back of every sonar operator's mind on Connecticut, was that this was an exceptionally productive patrol. The Type 094 had been cooperative in the best possible way, by simply going about its business in the sincere belief that it was alone. Now, let us be clear about the acoustic mismatch, because it deserves the full treatment. The Seawolf class was designed specifically to outquiet Soviet Akula-class submarines, which were themselves a response to the Los Angeles class. The engineering investment required to produce a submarine quieter than the Akula was, by any measure, extraordinary. The Seawolf program cost approximately $3.5 billion per hull in 1990s dollars, a figure that caused the program to be truncated at 3 boats when the Cold War ended and the specific threat driving the requirement evaporated. What remained were 3 submarines of almost absurd capability, operating in a world where their primary adversary's submarine force had improved but had not reached the acoustic baseline that justified their original development cost. The Type 094's acoustic signature, tracked at 22 nautical miles, is the kind of signal the BQQ-5E processes without particular computational effort. This is not mockery. It is physics. The Type 094 is a second-generation design from a submarine force that has been developing blue water nuclear deterrent capability for 20 years. The U.S. Navy has been building submarines designed specifically to be invisible for 70 years. The gap is not a failure of Chinese engineering. It is the accumulated result of 7 decades of institutional knowledge, operational experience, and the specific engineering choices made by people who spent the Cold War racing against the Soviet Union in a competition that produced vessels of extraordinary refinement. Put in a Type 094 in the Western Pacific and expecting Connecticut not to find it is a bit like leaving a concert grand piano at one end of a room, bringing in a second piano tuned slightly flat, and expecting the professional pianist sitting in the corner not to notice. He noticed. He's been noticing for 19 hours. The acoustic intelligence collection continued without incident through 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock, noon, and into the afternoon. The Type 094 settled into its patrol box, a defined area of ocean in the Philippine Sea where the JL-2's range covers a significant portion of the continental United States, and began its on-station patrol pattern. Slower, quieter, more deliberate. This is where ballistic missile submarines go to wait. The Type 094's crew had executed their transit successfully, arrived in their assigned area, and settled into the particular patient stillness of a submarine on deterrent patrol. They were, by any reasonable metric, doing their job professionally. Connecticut settled into a corresponding pattern 18 nautical miles away, and continued doing hers. The United States Pacific Fleet headquarters at Pearl Harbor had been receiving Connecticut's periodic situation reports, transmitted via extremely low-frequency communication systems that do not require the submarine to approach the surface throughout the patrol. The intelligence picture being built from Connecticut's collection was combining with data from other sources. P-8, a Poseidon maritime patrol aircraft operating in the area, SOSUS hydrophone arrays that monitor large sections of the Pacific Basin, and satellite reconnaissance of the Type 094's home port that had tracked its departure and predicted its general operating area. The composite picture was detailed enough to brief at Pacific Fleet's morning intelligence summary, which it was, under the classification level, appropriate to the source material for the past 3 days running. The P-8A Poseidon element is worth a separate discussion because it represents a different layer of the same problem for Chinese submarine operations. The P-8 is a Boeing 737 derivative operated by patrol squadrons across the Pacific. It carries a magnetic anomaly detector, sonobuoy dispensers, and processing equipment that allows it to establish acoustic barrier lines at significant ranges from the submarine's suspected position. On this particular transit, AP-8A from VP-45, the Pelicans, operating out of Kadena Air Base on Okinawa, had been tasked to establish a sonobuoy barrier across the Type 094's projected transit corridor 2 days before the submarine arrived. The barrier was not designed to detect the submarine primarily. Connecticut was handling that, but to provide a second, independent confirmation of the contact's position as it crossed specific waypoints. The Type 094 crossed the sonobuoy barrier line at 14:23 on the second day. The P-8A's acoustic processor noted the crossing. It also noted the specific blade rate signature and compared it against the library. The library match was 94% confidence, a Type 094 at transit speed, heading east-northeast. The P-8A transmitted its data to the patrol squadron's shore-based processing node, which forwarded it to Pacific Fleet. The contact report matched Connecticut's track data to within 0.3 nautical miles. 2 independent systems. 1 contact. 0 ambiguity. This is what layered anti-submarine warfare looks like in practice. It is not dramatic. It does not involve depth charges or close-range engagements or the kind of action sequences that submarine movies prefer. It is patient, systematic, and extraordinarily thorough. The Type 094 was, at every point in its transit, tracked by at least 1 and frequently 2 independent systems, neither of which the submarine's crew was aware of. The submarine believed it was alone in a vast ocean. The ocean was considerably less empty than it appeared. The cost accounting for this operation produces a figure that would prompt extended reflection in any defense budget discussion. Connecticut's operating costs alone, fuel, crew, maintenance, amortization, run to approximately $35 million for a 30-day deployment. The P-8A sorties, the SOSUS monitoring, the satellite overflight, the analysis and reporting chain. Conservatively, the United States spent somewhere between $60 and $80 million in operational costs to follow one Chinese submarine around the Western Pacific for 11 days. The Type 094 itself, for context, cost the plan approximately $1.5 billion to build. The JL-2 missiles it carries are worth considerably more. The deterrent value of the patrol is real and legitimate. China is entitled to conduct nuclear deterrent patrols, and the U.S. does not question that right. What the U.S. does question, and what this operation specifically examines, is whether the Type 094's patrol is actually achieving the deterrent effect its designers intend. A submarine-based deterrent works on the principle of uncertainty. The opponent cannot find the submarine, cannot locate it precisely enough to hold it at risk, and therefore cannot rationally calculate that a first engagement would eliminate the retaliatory capability. If the opponent can track your submarine from the moment it leaves port to the moment it arrives on station, the deterrent calculation changes. Not eliminated. A tracked submarine is still a submarine with missiles, but complicated. The strategic value of the patrol is reduced in proportion to the confidence the opponent has in its ability to locate the asset. China understands this. The Type 096 program and the next-generation propulsion and acoustic quieting technologies the plan is developing are a direct response to the acoustic gap that operations like this one reveal. The plan's submarine force is on a serious improvement trajectory. The Type 094 is not China's last word on the subject. It is, however, the current word. And the current word is being read quite clearly by the people paid to read it. Connecticut completed her trailing mission at 11:40 on the 14th day, turned southeast, and began her transit back toward Guam. The Type 094 continued its patrol. The intelligence package Connecticut carried, 19 hours of transit acoustics, the sprint and drift signature data, the patrol box geometry, the on-station behavior profile, would be transferred to the Undersea Warfare Center within 72 hours of her return to port. Analysts would spend weeks working through it. In Beijing, the Type 094's patrol would be classified a success. It had transited without incident, arrived on station, and was now performing its assigned deterrent function. No unusual contacts were reported. No counter-detection was achieved. The boat was where it was supposed to be, doing what it was supposed to do, all of which is technically accurate. The patrol was uneventful from the Type 094's perspective because Connecticut is very good at her job. The absence of an unusual contact report is not evidence that Connecticut wasn't there. It is evidence that Connecticut was there and chose not to be noticed. The Pacific is a large ocean. China's ballistic missile submarines operate in it with genuine professionalism and legitimate strategic purpose. The United States Pacific Fleet has been operating in the same ocean for 80 years, and its anti-submarine warfare architecture, satellites, patrol aircraft, SOSUS arrays, and fast attack submarines purpose-built to hunt exactly this kind of vessel, represents the accumulated result of those 8 decades. Beijing's submarine planners know Connecticut exists. They know the Seawolf class exists. They know the BQQ-5E sonar exists. They know what the P-8A does. They are working, seriously and with significant investment, to close the gaps that make operations like this one possible. That work will eventually produce results. It has not produced them yet. And, in the meantime, the Pacific stays surveilled by the people who have been surveilling it since before the Type 094's designers were born. The submarine that thought it was alone was never alone. In the Western Pacific, that is not a new development. It is simply Tuesday. Bye for now.